King Henry VIII underwent a significant transformation throughout his life, evolving from a lighthearted, merry, and easily given to laughter monarch into a fat, ill-tempered, paranoid tyrant. How did this drastic change occur? Since 2008, many people have pointed to January 24th, 1536, as a pivotal moment. On that day, Henry had his infamous jousting accident in the tiltyard of the Palace of Greenwich. According to a source, he was unconscious for 2 hours. His second wife, Anne Boleyn, is said to have been so distressed by the accident that she had a miscarriage. The lost child would have been a son. A 2016 study supported the theory that the jousting accident contributed to Henry's transformation, drawing comparisons to NFL football players. However, many historians have since contradicted this view. The available evidence is too scant to support this claim, and Henry had already exhibited tyrannical tendencies before the accident. Additionally, this was not the first sports accident of the Tudor king. Let's take a closer look at what happened. Henry was active in many sports, including tennis, wrestling, archery, and jousting. Accidents occurred repeatedly, but for a long time, they were not particularly dramatic. This changed in 1524 when Henry competed in jousting against his close friend, Charles Brandon. To understand this, it's essential to know that Henry loved jousting. A source from the early phase of his kingship reports that he trained daily. His father, Henry VII, had forbidden him to play the dangerous sport after he ascended to the throne following the death of his brother Arthur. Even after his coronation, his Privy Council wanted to forbid him from jousting. This led Henry to compete in secret for a time. Once there was such a dangerous accident that the audience thought the king was injured, prompting him to reveal himself. By then, however, Henry had emancipated himself from his Privy Council. He devoted himself to his passion with great enthusiasm, which kept him slim, despite the 13 dishes he supposedly ate per day. At the same time, he was very skilled, with few opponents at court posing a challenge. Additionally, only a few dared to fully demonstrate their skills against the monarch. Even with the use of so-called jousts of peace, hollow lances that shattered on impact, the sport remained dangerous. The more hazardous jousts of war were seldom used, making the name indicative of their appearance. Even the less dangerous variants posed a significant threat when two horses galloped toward each other at full speed. The Venetian ambassador, Sebastian Giustinian, reported in 1519 that Henry trained so intensively he did not stop until he had tired 8 to 10 horses. Brandon was one of the few men who matched Henry's rigor and did not hold back against him. This brings us to the fateful day of March 10th, 1524. Henry and Brandon competed against each other, but Henry is said to have forgotten to close his visor. Brandon could not see this. According to Edward Hall's chronicle, Brandon was only informed that the king was on his way, prompting him to start. The audience allegedly recognized the danger and shouted, "Hold! Hold!" But the men could not hear it. Brandon's lance missed Henry's eye by a hair's breadth, nearly causing the king to lose his sight. Henry, however, laughed at the incident, admitting it was his fault for forgetting to close his visor. As a result of the accident, Henry is said to have suffered from migraine attacks for the rest of his life. Additionally, the first purulent ulcers formed on his legs. It is speculated that he could have inflicted these on himself. To emphasize his calves, he allegedly wore very tight garters that cut into his flesh. The question remains whether Brandon truly couldn't see that Henry's visor wasn't closed. This is likely true. In 2020, researchers discovered the tiltyard in Greenwich, giving us a good idea of the facility's size: 200 meters, 650 feet, long, and 76 meters, 250 feet, wide. Henry also had a helmet with a visor that showed his face, but it is unknown whether he wore this helmet that day. Brandon swore after the accident that he would never joust against the king again. However, this resolution did not last. Just 9 months later, the two men competed against each other once more. On January 24, 1536, Henry's opponent was not Charles Brandon, but Sir Henry Norris, a confidant of Anne Boleyn. During the joust, Henry fell off his horse while wearing full armor, and his horse, also armored, fell on him. 3 sources report on the accident. The first is a letter from Imperial Ambassador Eustace Chapuys to Charles V. The second is Wriothesley's Chronicle, and the third is a letter from the Imperial Ambassador in Rome, Dr. Pedro Ortiz, to the Empress. My members can find all crucial source passages in full text in the Community tab, which also includes von Hall's report on the 1524 accident. What is significant for us is that, according to Chapuys and the Chronicle, Henry was uninjured. Only Ortiz reports a 2-hour loss of consciousness, and this is hearsay. He refers to a letter he claims to have received from the British ambassador to France. It is important to note that ambassadors could not simply write whatever they wanted. Information flowed to the powerful from various sources, and an obvious lie would be quickly exposed. However, we have no source from anyone in England at the time confirming unconsciousness. All 3 sources agree that the accident led to Anne's miscarriage. This brings us to the question of whether the 1536 accident is responsible for Henry's transformation into a tyrant. The obvious point is clear. It unquestionably contributed to the change in Henry's physical form. At 44, he could no longer train, but continued to eat excessively. Let's now examine the supporting arguments. The 2008 documentary, Inside the Body of Henry VIII, conducted by historian Dr. Lucy Worsley, Henry's biographer Robert Hutchinson, and physician Catherine Hood, provides insight. Worsley explains their view. We posit that his jousting accident of 1536 provides the explanation for his personality change from a sporty, promising, generous young prince to a cruel, paranoid, and vicious tyrant, Dr. Worsley said. From that date, the turnover of the wives really speeds up, and people begin to talk about him in quite a new and negative way, she continued. After the accident, he was unconscious for 2 hours. Even 5 minutes of unconsciousness is considered to be a major trauma today. A 2016 study conducted by scientists at Yale University, which I link in the description, supports this assumption. The study indicated that the king exhibited symptoms consistent with traumatic brain injuries. The experts compared Henry's possible injuries to those sustained by professional American football players. Lead author Arash Saladini remarked, "It is intriguing to think that modern European history may have changed forever because of a blow to the head." Now let's consider the counter-arguments. Due to the limited source material, historians have repeatedly questioned whether any assumptions about Henry's condition are warranted. It is often pointed out that Henry was already a tyrant before the accident. For example, he had his former friend Thomas More executed in 1535. His treatment of Catherine of Aragon and his daughter Mary was not exactly that of a loving husband and father. His marriage to Anne Boleyn was also fraught with tension. Tracy Borman argues that the constant and worsening pain Henry experienced is enough to explain his behavioral change over time. No head injury was required for this. His mental health certainly did not improve, as he was no longer the athletic Adonis of earlier days. I am not a physician, and I would like the following statements to be understood with this caveat. Diagnosing a person who has been dead for 500 years is challenging, especially with such limited source material. Several potential factors could have contributed to Henry's transformation into a tyrant. I agree with Boleyn that chronic pain likely played a significant role, contributing to his constant bad mood. It is possible that this chronic pain began with migraine attacks after 1524. However, it is important to note that this was, in many ways, Henry's own fault. He was aware of the dangers and chose to ignore them. By 1536, he was already 44 years old. Ultimately, only one person can be held responsible for the king's transformation into a tyrant, Henry VIII himself. And as usual, thanks for watching. And please like and subscribe to help the channel.